Running mock draft simulations for the upcoming NFL draft on Pro Football Focus, I noticed a trend developing in the first two rounds for the New Orleans Saints. The same two rookie prospects being available in those first two rounds. In today's Saints film room, we break down those two players. Now, first one is generational running back prospect Jeremiyah Love from Notre Dame, taking him at number 8 overall. And at number 42, Oregon left guard Emmanuel Pregnon, who might be as good as the consensus number 1 prospect Vega Ioane. Out of the 50 mock 2-round mock drafts I did as an experiment, that combination of Love at 8 and Pregnon at 42 happened 21 times, 42%. So in my opinion, that situation happens. That is the perfect 2-round mock draft. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So this is the scenario, those 2-round mocks I was running that, like I said, 21 out of 50, 42% of the time showed up. Now, to clarify before we actually get into some looking at some film and talking some numbers, what I mean by the perfect draft is the scenario where we show up at 8, there's Love. Perfect pick for us. Take it. Come back around in the second round, 42. Pregnon is there. Perfect. Take him. This combination solves two of the pressing problems that the Saints need to address, either in free agency in the draft, and right now we're just going to focus on the draft. Explosive playmaker, and it's going to be hard to find one better in the draft than Jeremiyah Love. I challenge you to try. And fill in that left guard hole in the offensive interior with a guy that can pass protect and a guy that can open holes for the run. These two young men fit the both those categories. But what I want to stress is the 21 out of 50 is that 42% is the representation of how many times we would have been able to make that pick. I did not track the other possibilities where they're both going, where one was at the available slot where we would take him and the other one isn't. So a couple different combinations that show up there. And more to the point, it literally, I was periodically working every day. I do some mocks, different scenarios, looking for trades, not looking for trades, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, full 7 rounds. But I kept seeing that combination come up, whether I took it or not in those particular drafts. I didn't document those. I don't know how many times it did happen or if that 42% would have been accurate, but I feel like it would have been within the margin of error. So I think when you see trends developing, even though this is an imperfect tool with definitely imperfect information right now, it's worth noticing. And in our situation, not saying with utter confidence it can happen, but I'm saying it's a distinct possibility. Two really good football players in two areas where we could really use some high level draft prospects could potentially be there. Now, why I like these guys so much, let's go ahead to the film and check it out. I think Jeremiyah Love is a generational prospect at running back, runs with power, runs through you, over you. In the open field, he's a terror. He's got speed, agility, balance, loves jumping over people trying to go low on him. He can house it from anywhere. 90 plus yards, not really a problem in the end zone or red zone. He'll jump right over you. He shows great vision and cutting ability. One of the things about him is his yards after contact is amazing. In fact, my advice to any defenders playing against him is you better play all the way through the whistle, because if you don't, if you do not get him to the ground, he can burn you 7 different ways from Sunday. That film package that I threw together right there shows that, hey, yeah, he can burn you. He can do just about everything on a football field you want him to do. And that's in 3 years in college at Notre Dame. He's listed right now, and we'll find out for sure at the combine, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. He's going to turn 21 a month after he's drafted and becomes a millionaire, if he isn't already one due to NIL. But looking at his individual years, and I'm going to combine receptions and rushes and rushing attempts, excuse me, and just combine them into touches. You'll see why in a little bit. But in 2023, 79 combined touches, 462 combined yards, 2 total touchdowns. And that was as a backup to current Saints running back Audric Estime, and ultimately who became his backup and is also in this draft, a running back by the name of Jadarian Price. 2024, 191 combined touches, 1,362 combined yards, 18 total touchdowns. Kick that up a notch in 2025. 226 combined touches, 1,652 yards, 21 touchdowns. Now, this is a combination of regular season and any postseason games that Notre Dame played in over those years. Still very impressive numbers in those 3 years. Two as a bell cow running back, the first one as basically a backup. 496 combined touches in those 3 years. 3,476 yards rushing and receiving combined. 41 total touchdowns. He averaged 7 yards per touch. Whether they handed it to him or they threw it to him, you can count on him gaining you 7 yards. Kind of an insane number when you stop and think about it. So naturally, if you're going to want to talk about PFF grades, yeah, they were pretty good. When you're talking about production like that and you watch some of the film clips we're showing about what he can do on a football field with a football in his hands, regardless of what the defense is trying to do. The only thing he ever got a ding on in his college career as far as PFF film study is pass protection. Not uncommon. And even college running backs who pass protect well in college, and he wasn't necessarily one of them, they sometimes still struggle at that. It's expected. I don't think he was an unwilling, and I don't think it's a big deal, and nothing to really concern ourselves about if push comes to shove and you need to put a third down back on the field. Alvin, Audric, Devin, they all proved that they can handle that sort of thing. But outside of that, they're outstanding. Solidly and good to great into some elite numbers when you're looking at his film and trying to grade it out. He's 80 plus grades everywhere for PFF. If you're looking outside of his raw numbers, those combined touches and yardage and touchdowns, and still get into the metrics, then you really see some insane stuff happen. One of the ones that immediately grabs your attention, and he was absolutely one of the best in college football, is what PFF calls an elusive rating. Basically, it's a formula they use to figure out, outside of what his blocking does for him, how much yardage does he generate? How elusive is he? So the combinations of what they're using to figure that out, just very basically, is the missed tackles he forces, where guys are completely whiffing on him. The design number of touches. So that's why we've been including carries and receptions. And more importantly, probably most importantly, yards, the average yards after contact that he gains. So they basically have a formula that measures up these categories, coming up with 125.5 as an elusive rating. Yeah, it's one of the tops in college football. There are guys that are better, believe it or not, and almost all of them are wide receivers, and almost all of them on far less touches than he has. In the film, he shows a lot of that, making people miss completely, or even when they're getting contact on him, he's still pushing forward. And if it's a game of inches, he's gaining inches by the foot every time he touches the ball. So when you look at his total raw numbers in 2025, and that 125.5 was, just to clarify, was his 2025 elusive rating. But his raw numbers that kind of help figure into that, he forced 56 missed tackles. He had 896 yards after contact. He had 23 runs of 15 plus yards. It's 127 attempts in zone running schemes, 70 attempts in gap. So heavier towards zone, but still quite significant number of gap scheme carries. And then when you want to talk about his receiving, you're probably going to start that he had in 2025 one drop pass and 34 targets. Yeah, that's a 2.9% drop rate. Excellent. And as a receiver, there's a lot to love there for sure. Because when you look at his film, you can find examples of coming out of the backfield and this is something Saints running backs, especially Alvin Kamara, has been very good at over the years. He knows how to take an option route. When he's coming out of that defender's taking an outside position, he'll move inside, catch the ball. He catches the ball in space. It's a problem for the defense. Repeatedly shows that when they're using him in the screen game, design screens, or even some checkdowns where he'll get blockers out in front of him, he makes defenders miss. There's no doubt about that. And he's very patient with whatever blockers become available to him, letting them set up before he goes ahead and makes his move. And his downfield, look, displays great vision and cutting ability, whether he's working at the line of scrimmage or he's already 30 yards downfield after he caught the ball. He also shows he can go downfield and make catches. And not only make catches more as a receiver than a running back, he can make incredibly tough catches. Two of them that I have here is one on a touchdown on a wheel route against Texas A&M. That was unbelievable. And another one against Arkansas where he's running a deep out on not the greatest pass in the world, snags it, controls it, double taps the feet in to make sure of the catch. Brings more than just being a running back on the table. This is a multi-use guy that can just scare the living crap out of defenses with all this ability he can create in space or the yardage he can create when you don't give him space. And I think that's what it really boils down to is as a ball carrier and as a pass catcher in the backfield or downfield, this guy is a real problem for defenses. Like I said, you can't afford to give him space because he's going to take full advantage of it and he's going to make you pay. And even if you're trying to corral him and take that space away from him, he's more than capable of fighting out the tough yardage that his team's going to need. So, college career in his 3 total years, we talked about what he did in 2025, but the total was 1,885 yards after contact in 3 years. It's a 4.35 yards per average. Forced 134 missed tackles in those 3 years. I have seen comps for Jeremiyah Love include Alvin Kamara, of course, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Looking at his numbers and looking at his film, I can't dispute these as comps on the college level. Let's just say that. We don't know how this is going to translate into the NFL, but I'll tell you what, I'm comfortable with thinking those names, those running backs, and at times the older ones were among the best. Christian McCaffrey still is probably. And when you're talking about Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, yeah, you get anything close to those two running backs, you got something. So I can't disagree with the comps. I can't tell you for sure he's going to hit the comps, but I can tell you for sure I want to give him the chance to be one of those type running backs here in New Orleans after the draft. Now diving into Oregon left guard Emmanuel Pregnon, I knew very early on in the draft process, before I even started looking at Ioane, much less Pregnon, knew that they were the top two guys, and there seemed to always be a clear divide between Ioane and Pregnon. And after reviewing both of them, I have absolutely no idea why. Put it in perspective, it's like saying, hey, there's a clear gap between when you're talking about Dice and Tate or Lemon right now, deciding that one of them is clearly ahead of the others. I don't really know if you can do that. I have a preference, but I'm not I'm not here to say, yeah, one guy is 16 picks because that's about what it amounts to when they're talking about Ioane mid to late first and Pregnon early to mid second. Technically, that could be up as many as 32 pick difference going a whole round, and I just don't see it. Now, one of the things about Pregnon is he was a coming out of high school, he was a two-way player. He was a two-star prospect, not really ranked much in any of the services, winds up at the University of Wyoming, takes red shirts in 20 and 21, 2022 double redshirt freshman season, earns a starting guard spot, kind of breaks out and makes some second team All-American honors as a freshman or freshman team All-American honors. This catches some programs' attention in the days of the early days of NIL and transfer portal. USC comes a calling. 23 and 24 the next 2 years he plays for the Trojans. All he did there was in 23 started 12 games, came back in 24 started 13 games. In 24, 882 snaps without allowing a sack is pretty good. But in 2023 for USC, that was 0 sacks on 773 snaps. Had an off year in 2025 when he transferred to Oregon and even got to make a run into the college playoffs with them. So in 15 games, total of 849 snaps at left guard. Now, like I said, he had a down year because he actually gave up 1 sack. In those 3 years, 1 sack combined through 2,500, 2,600 plus snaps. Well, total pressures he gave up was only 28, and quarterback hits were only 8. Some outstanding pass blocking numbers. So when you go into PFF, you're looking at the same guy almost as Ioane when it comes to pass blocking. And they both have the reputation, and this is almost verbatim in some of the prospect sites looking at both of them, talking about extremely powerful pass blocker, good power run blocker. They get their hands on you. If you're the defender, you're done. You're blocked. You can't get off their blocks. They bring up his issues with possibly some lateral movement, which I get because guys like this, I mean, you're talking about 2 guys that are both 6'4", 6'5", 320 plus pounds. If they moved really well laterally, they'd be playing tackle. But I don't know for sure, but I don't think that lack of lateral movement as they're kind of getting dinged for may or may not be a big deal in the NFL, but we'll find out. But the only 2 difference between the 2 is Oregon in its senior year, looking at their 2025 PFF grades, he grades out higher at zone and lower at gap than Ioane. I think that's largely because Oregon's definitely a heavy zone team and a lot of outside zone, which he runs pretty well. So the way they were used and the schemes they were used are slightly opposite of each other. Maybe that makes such a big difference in all this. That'd be the only thing that I can guess. But I can tell you this much, whether you're talking about his 85.8 run block grade, his 88.1 pass block, zone grade of 93, gap grade of 69, and true set pass blocking of 85.1, all 5 are the key stats that PFF likes to look at film grade for these guys. He's in the upper 10 percentile on all of them. He was among one of the best in college football. 670 guards were graded by PFF. Ioane was a clear 1. Pregnon's the clear 2. Where this gap comes in, I don't know. But what I feel like is, unless something comes out in medicals or in the measurements or the interview process, whatever, once the combine starts and they really get hardcore into the pre-draft process, I don't know what the difference is that great of them that when you're talking about the tremendous value, you get a guy in Pregnon at 42 when his closest comp in this draft, people are saying somewhere between 18 and 25. I don't understand this gap, but I do see that if he's sitting there under the scenario of where we're just focusing on the draft, the value in point blank, we talked about it in the last video, stressed in the comments, a lot of people agree. It's almost impossible to say, yeah, we're going to take a guard at 8. I don't care how good he is. And, my reference is if he proves he's Quentin Nelson, then you think about it. And that's a tough ask. But I tell you what, a guy proving he's a potential first-round talent still sitting there at 42, absolutely a no-brainer, especially in the Saints position. So, again, the perfect draft in the sense that when you're picking at 8, Jeremiyah Love, available right now, all things considered, the Saints, no-brainer, you take him. Pregnon is the exact same situation when he shows up at 42, if he shows up at 42. That need still exists. It's a hell of a pick right there, especially when you got the generational running back in front of him. It's a hell of a pick, and one the Saints would definitely be foolish not to make. So to wrap this up, biggest point I can make at this point is to completely stress what we're talking about here. That these series of 2-round mocks is the perfect draft scenario for the first 2 rounds, the perfect 2-round mock. But it is not the perfect offseason scenario for the Saints, at least not in my mind, because I still think, and doing these series of videos has reinforced it pretty much, still think the best move that they could make, go ahead, grab that bag of cash, get David Edwards here to be our starting left guard. If Buffalo lets him go, which it sounds like he's in a walk year from him, I think he's the guy you target, and you target hard, and you get him here. That happens, I feel better. And look, there's some good running backs we could also grab that would solve the explosive playmaker problem. But I'd really like to take my shot at Jeremiyah Love. Far younger, far less tread on the tires. Knock on wood, no injury history to speak of. Just overall, when you look at what he can do on a football field, I can't see anywhere where that is not going to show up and play on an NFL field, especially with an offensive-minded and creative coach, and especially if you fix your offensive line by getting the best left guard available into New Orleans to be your starting left guard. The perfect scenario is got to start off-season, start with signing David Edwards. I think that's the call. Now, if that doesn't happen, doesn't mean it's over. There's plenty of other options. One of the options is the likelihood that, again, when I was talking about the trends, it's not to say it's definitely going to happen, but in the scenario we're working with, imperfect system with imperfect information 3 months before the event's actually going to happen, you kind of get the sense of it could come to fruition. And if we have to go that way, there's a pretty decent chance we might be able to pull off that combo of Jeremiyah Love and Emmanuel Pregnon. So, first time here, please hit the like, share, subscribe. Down in the comments, below, just let me know what you think about any of these scenarios, which way it plays out. I think, in those of you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think a lot of people are looking at what I would consider the perfect offseason scenario. Maybe even if it isn't David Edwards, there's some other possibilities out there. I think he's just the best one. But getting one of those guys solves a lot of issues where we won't have to rely on, even though in a limited sample size simulation, 42% of the time we got a pretty perfect first 2 rounds. I don't know if we want to rely on that happening when we actually go in the draft, because the randomness cannot be predicted. And this draft has a good chance of producing some of that. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Your perfect scenario on how all this should work out. Coming up next, we're going to start looking at the defense again, because really we need to talk about some monsters in the middle when it comes to defensive line. And if the perfect scenario works out for us, hey, 42, that's another spot, defensive line, especially on the interior, but on the edge also, where some we might be considered as first round talent, may be sitting there and would still be good picks for us. So till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out, and who dat.